The first time Marcus stepped off the bus onto the bustling streets of New York City, the winter air bit at his cheeks, sharp and unforgiving. He clutched his worn duffel bag tighter, feeling the weight of not just his belongings, but the dreams of a lifetime pressed against his heart. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, Marcus had always felt a restless pull towards something bigger, something beyond the horizons he had known. America, with its promise of opportunity, had called to him like a distant star. And now, standing amidst the chaos of honking taxis and towering skyscrapers, he knew he had answered. He had no job, no friends in the city, and only a faint sense of direction. Yet there was a fire within him that no cold wind could extinguish. Every setback he had faced in his hometown, every closed door, every whispered doubt, had prepared him for this moment. Marcus remembered his father's words on the night he had left. "Son, you may stumble, you may fall, but in America, the man who keeps walking is the man who reaches the stars." The first few weeks were harsh. Marcus bounced between odd jobs, delivering newspapers in the early morning chill, washing dishes in diners long past midnight, and sweeping floors in shops that barely noticed him. The city seemed indifferent, almost hostile at times, yet every dollar earned was a step closer to the dream he had carried since childhood, to start his own tech company, a venture that could change lives and, in some small way, leave a mark on the country that had given him a chance. One rainy afternoon, as Marcus trudged through puddles with soggy shoes and aching muscles, he glimpsed a poster on a community board, "Startup Workshop, Learn to Build Your Dream Business." Something clicked. It was the opportunity he hadn't known he was waiting for. Despite his exhaustion and doubt, he signed up. That night, as the rain drummed against the window of his tiny shared apartment, Marcus allowed himself a moment of hope. For the first time in months, he felt that flicker of possibility grow into a flame. The workshop was held in a modest office in Brooklyn, filled with people from every corner of the city, each carrying their own visions of success. Marcus listened to the speakers, absorbed every word, and asked questions that revealed his hunger to learn. There, among strangers who were just as uncertain, yet just as determined, he found the first seed of mentorship in Elena, a seasoned entrepreneur with a knack for seeing potential where others saw only risk. She saw it in Marcus immediately, the persistence, the curiosity, the refusal to be defined by circumstance. "Elena," he asked hesitantly after one session, "do you really think someone like me, someone with nothing, can actually make it?" Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "Marcus, America was built on people who dared to dream. It doesn't matter where you start. It matters that you keep moving forward, learning, failing, and trying again. That's how stars are reached." And so began the journey that would define Marcus's life. From that night onward, every challenge became a lesson, every setback a stepping stone. The city that had once seemed indifferent now felt like a canvas, vast and open, waiting for him to leave his mark. And Marcus, with nothing but his dreams and an unwavering resolve, began to paint. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Marcus's life settled into a rhythm of controlled chaos. Early mornings, late nights, endless applications, and countless rejected proposals. Each no gnawed at his confidence, yet every small victory, however minor, lit a spark of hope. One morning, after another long night of coding and brainstorming, he managed to land a meeting with a small but promising tech startup in Manhattan. The office was cramped, buzzing with energy, and smelled faintly of coffee and ambition. As Marcus presented his ideas, he noticed the skeptical glances of the investors. He fumbled at first, nerves twisting his words. But then he remembered Elena's advice. Speak with honesty, with passion. Numbers can be learned, heart cannot be faked. Drawing a deep breath, he dove back into his presentation, explaining not only the technical aspects of his vision, but the purpose behind it, the lives it could touch, the opportunities it could create. By the end, a few nods of approval had replaced the earlier doubts. Marcus left the meeting exhausted, but with the tiniest glimmer of triumph. A seed planted, a door ajar. Yet life in New York was merciless. Rent consumed half of his earnings, the city's endless noise left him sleepless, and loneliness clung like a shadow. Some nights Marcus would sit by the window, staring at the glowing skyline, wondering if the dream he chased was just a fool's fantasy. And yet, each morning, he forced himself out of bed, because giving up was not an option. In the smallest coffee shops, in the crowded subway, in the corridors of buildings that scraped the clouds, he reminded himself that every successful person had walked this path, and he too had to endure. It was during one of these low points that he met Jamal, a young programmer from Chicago who shared a similar struggle. They bonded over shared frustrations, dreams, and late-night coding sessions. Jamal became more than a friend. He was a sounding board, a collaborator, someone who pushed Marcus beyond his self-imposed limits. Together, they began working on a prototype for an app that could revolutionize online learning, making quality education accessible to anyone with a smartphone. The hours were grueling, the errors countless, but every bug fixed, every feature perfected, brought them closer to their vision. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. One evening, after weeks of near despair, Marcus stayed late at a small library, tweaking the app's interface. His phone buzzed. It was an email from a major tech incubator. They were interested in reviewing his prototype. Marcus could hardly breathe. Months of relentless effort, sleepless nights, and sacrifices had converged in a single moment of opportunity. With Jamal by his side, he prepared the presentation with meticulous care, knowing that this was not just a chance, it was a lifeline. Presentation day arrived. Marcus felt the familiar knot of nerves in his stomach as he stood before a panel of seasoned investors. But as he began speaking, passion replaced fear. He told the story of his journey, from the bus ride into New York, to the endless nights of struggle, to the vision that had refused to die. He spoke not just as a programmer, but as someone who had lived the challenges he now sought to solve for others. The room was silent for a heartbeat, then murmurs of approval followed. By the end, not only had Marcus secured funding, but he had also found allies who believed in him and his vision. Walking out of the building, he felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of relief, pride, and anticipation. For the first time, the dream felt tangible, within reach. Yet Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The city had tested him, life had challenged him, but every struggle had made him stronger, more resilient, more determined. He realized that success was not a destination, but a journey, a series of steps, some faltering, some bold, but each moving him closer to the stars he had always aimed for. Even as he celebrated, Marcus looked out over the city from the rooftop of his small apartment building. Lights flickered below like constellations brought to earth. And he whispered to himself, "This is just the start." And in that quiet moment, he understood something fundamental. In America, dreams were not merely wished upon, they were earned, fought for, and nurtured. And Marcus was ready to keep reaching. Marcus's world had begun to change, but life, as it often does, refused to be easy. The initial excitement of securing funding quickly gave way to the harsh realities of building a startup from scratch. Investors had expectations, deadlines loomed, and every decision carried weight that could determine the success or failure of their fledgling company. Sleep became a luxury he could no longer afford, and stress became a constant companion, whispering doubts at every corner. One morning, as Marcus sifted through emails at a crowded cafe, he read a message that made his stomach drop. Jamal had been offered a lucrative position at a major tech firm. The pay was enormous, the stability enviable, but it meant leaving the startup behind. Marcus felt a sudden emptiness, as though the foundation beneath him had cracked. They had built this dream together, and now he faced the terrifying prospect of continuing alone. He reached out to Jamal immediately. Their conversation was long, heartfelt, and filled with conflicting emotions. "I can't blame you," Marcus said finally, his voice tight. "You've earned this. But what do I do now?" Jamal's answer was simple yet profound. "Keep going, Marcus. This is your dream. You have to fight for it, even if I can't be there. You've got what it takes." Alone once again, Marcus felt the weight of the city pressing down on him. The loneliness was more than just physical. It gnawed at his confidence, whispering that maybe he wasn't cut out for this after all. But every time he felt like surrendering, he remembered the faces of the students he had imagined helping through his app, the families that could benefit, and the father who had told him to keep walking toward the stars. He threw himself into the work with renewed determination, but setbacks seemed endless. A critical software bug caused a major demo to fail in front of potential clients. One investor pulled out, citing lack of confidence in the team's ability to execute. Vendors delayed shipments of essential hardware, and through it all, Marcus battled self-doubt, questioning whether he had the resilience to survive the very dream he had fought so hard to reach. It was during these dark times that Elena reappeared in his life. She had been following his progress from afar, quietly impressed by his persistence. "Marcus," she said over coffee one rainy afternoon, "you're in the fire now. This is where real growth happens. You'll either come out stronger or you'll let it break you. The choice is yours." Her words struck a chord. Marcus realized that his setbacks were not the end, they were the proving ground. He began approaching problems differently, learning to delegate, trusting others, and embracing failure as part of the process, rather than a reflection of his worth. He worked tirelessly, not just coding, but networking, marketing, and negotiating, often feeling the strain in every muscle of his body. Months passed. The failures were still there, but slowly victories began to emerge. A client loved the app's new features. A small investor believed in the vision and provided crucial support. Jamal occasionally checked in, offering advice and encouragement, reminding Marcus that he was not truly alone. With each minor success, Marcus's confidence grew, and the vision he had once imagined in a small, lonely apartment now felt increasingly within reach. Then came the biggest test yet, a major tech competition that could provide both funding and national recognition. Marcus entered, knowing the stakes were high and the competition fierce. The night before the final presentation, he hardly slept, pacing in his apartment, rehearsing lines and fixing last-minute bugs. Doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What if I fail? What if all this effort was for nothing? But as the sun rose over the city, spilling light across skyscrapers and streets below, Marcus remembered why he had started. He thought of every challenge he had faced, every setback he had turned into a lesson, and every person who had believed in him. With a deep breath, he stepped into the auditorium, heart pounding but resolute, ready to present not just an app, but a dream that had been forged in struggle, perseverance, and relentless hope. The presentation was electric. Marcus spoke with honesty, passion, and clarity, weaving together his personal story with the potential of his technology. He could see the impact in the audience's eyes, the spark of belief, the understanding that this was not just a product, but a mission. When the judges announced the winner, Marcus's name rang out. Cheers erupted, and in that moment, years of struggle, sleepless nights, and unwavering faith coalesced into victory. But Marcus knew the true triumph was not the award itself. It was the journey, the resilience he had discovered within himself, the lessons he had learned, and the unshakable belief that no dream was too big for someone willing to endure, adapt, and persist. America had tested him, challenged him, and at times threatened to break him, but in the process, it had also given him the tools to succeed. Standing on the stage, trophy in hand, Marcus looked out over the crowd, eyes misted with emotion. He whispered quietly, almost to himself, "This is only the beginning. The stars are still out there."